The day Nia's grandmother passed away, everything felt quiet in a way that didn't make sense. The house, once full of her soft laughter and warm presence, suddenly felt empty, like something important had been taken out of the air itself. Nia stood in the living room, holding back tears, still trying to process that the one person who always understood her was gone. Her grandmother wasn't just family, she was Nia's safe place. After the funeral, relatives started gathering, talking in low voices about responsibilities and what comes next. That's when the word inheritance first came up. Nia didn't think much of it at first. To her, this wasn't about money, it was about loss. But slowly she started hearing details. Her grandmother had left behind something big, a piece of land in a prime location, and a commercial property that had been in the family for years. It wasn't just valuable, it was life-changing. Still, the family acted calm, united, like everything was under control. Her mother gently placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "Don't worry, Nia. Everything will be handled fairly." Those words felt comforting. Like a promise she didn't need to question. Nia nodded, trusting her completely. She didn't ask for documents. She didn't ask for details. She believed her family would do the right thing, because why wouldn't they? That moment, grief made everything blurry, and trust came easily. What Nia didn't realize was this. Sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones already making decisions without you. A few weeks passed, and life slowly started going back to normal, at least on the surface. But something felt off. At first, Nia couldn't explain it. It was just a strange feeling in her chest, like she was being left out of something important. Small things started catching her attention. Her mother would step outside to take calls and lower her voice. Her father would suddenly stop talking when Nia walked into the room. Even her brother Luke seemed more distant, always busy, always handling something. One evening, Nia came home earlier than usual and heard voices coming from the dining room. The door was slightly closed. She recognized her parents' voices, and Luke's too. They were talking seriously. She pushed the door open a little and heard words like documents, transfer, and finalizing. Her heart skipped. Why wasn't she part of this? As soon as they noticed her, the conversation stopped. Too quickly. Too awkwardly. "Oh, Nia, you're home early," her mother said, forcing a smile. "Yeah," Nia replied slowly, looking at all of them. "What are you guys talking about?" "Nothing important," her father said casually. "Just some small paperwork." Small paperwork. That didn't match the serious tone she had just heard. Over the next few days it kept happening. Meetings behind closed doors. Papers being moved around. Phone calls that ended the second she walked in. It wasn't just once or twice. It was constant. Finally, Nia couldn't ignore it anymore. One night at dinner, she put her fork down and asked directly, "Can someone tell me what's going on with Grandma's property?" There was a pause. Her mother exchanged a quick look with her father before answering. "We're just sorting things out. It's complicated." "Complicated how?" Nia pressed gently. "Legal stuff," Luke jumped in quickly. "You wouldn't really understand. We'll handle it." That sentence hit harder than expected. You wouldn't understand. Nia went quiet after that, but inside, something shifted. They weren't just handling things. They were handling them without her. And the more she thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't about protecting her. This was about keeping her out. A few days later, Nia finally got a moment alone with her father. It wasn't planned. They were just sitting in the living room, the TV running quietly in the background. For a second, everything felt normal again, like before all the strange behavior started. Nia took a breath and decided to ask again, but this time more calmly. "Dad, what's happening with Grandma's property?" Her father didn't look nervous. He didn't hesitate. In fact, he looked almost too relaxed. He shrugged slightly and said, "There's nothing much to it, Nia. Honestly, the property didn't have any real value." The words were simple. Too simple. Nia blinked, trying to process what he just said. "No real value," she repeated slowly. "Yeah," he nodded casually. "It wasn't worth much. Old land, outdated building, not something you need to worry about." For a moment, Nia just stared at him. because what he was saying didn't match what she knew. She remembered visiting that place with her grandmother. The location was not random. It was right near a growing commercial area. New shops had been opening, roads were being developed, people were investing there. Her grandmother had once smiled and told her, "One day, this place will be worth more than you can imagine." That memory hit her hard now. So how could it suddenly have no value? Nia forced a small smile, but inside, her thoughts were racing. "Oh, okay," she said quietly, pretending to accept it. But something didn't sit right. Not just the words, but how easily he said them. No explanation, no details, just a clean, simple answer that ended the conversation. And that's what made it feel wrong. 'Cause the truth is usually messy. Comes with details, explanations, maybe even frustration. But this felt prepared. Like a line he had already decided to say. That night, Nia lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation again and again in her mind. No real value. The more she thought about it, the less it made sense. And for the first time, a clear thought formed in her mind. What if they're lying to me? It wasn't a loud realization. It was quiet, slow, but heavy. Because once doubt enters, it doesn't leave easily. And now, Nia couldn't unsee it. Something was definitely wrong. A few days later, something happened that Nia would never forget. It wasn't planned. She wasn't trying to spy. Just happened. Her mother had asked her to bring a file from the study room. Sounded normal, nothing serious. Nia walked in without thinking twice. The room was quiet, a little messy, papers spread across the desk like someone had been in a hurry. She started looking for the file, but then her eyes stopped on something else. Document. It was placed slightly under another folder, but not completely hidden, just enough to catch attention. Nia hesitated for a second, then she pulled it out. At the top, bold letters caught her eye. Sale agreement. Her heart skipped. Sale. Slowly she started reading. At first, it didn't fully register. Legal words, long sentences. But then her eyes landed on a number. Huge number. Her breath caught. This wasn't no real value. This was a massive amount. Life-changing money. Her hands started to feel cold as she kept reading. Property details. Location. It was her grandmother's property. There was no mistake. Nia's chest tightened. Her mind went blank for a second, like it refused to accept what she was seeing. But the words were right there, clear and undeniable. Then she saw the buyer's name. Emmanuel Dlamini. Someone she had never even heard of. And then, the part that hit the hardest. She scanned the document again and again, looking for her name. Anywhere. Any mention. Nothing. Not as an owner. Not as a witness. Not even as someone informed. Nothing. It was like she didn't exist. Nia slowly lowered the paper, her hands shaking now. Her heartbeat was loud in her ears. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't complicated legal stuff. This was real. They had sold the property. They had lied to her. And they had done it without her. A strange silence filled the room, but inside Nia, everything was crashing. Every conversation, every vague answer, every forced smile. It all made sense now. She wasn't being protected. She was being erased. Nia looked down at the document one last time, her eyes fixed on that huge number again. No real value, her father had said. The lie echoed in her mind louder than ever. And in that moment, something inside her changed. The trust she once had was gone. Nia didn't say anything. Not that day. Not the next day either. She folded the document back exactly the way she found it, placed it under the folder, and walked out of the study like nothing had happened. Her face was calm, but inside everything was different now. She had seen the truth, and instead of reacting, she chose to stay quiet. She started watching, observing, listening. At dinner, her mother talked about normal things. Groceries, neighbors, random stories, like life was completely normal. Her father laughed at small jokes. Luke scrolled on his phone, occasionally joining the conversation. No one looked guilty. No one looked nervous. No one acted like they had just sold something that belonged to all of them, without telling her. That's what hurt the most. It wasn't just the lie. It was how normal they were. One evening, her mother even asked, "Nia, are you okay? You've been quiet lately." Nia forced a small smile. "Yeah, just tired." Tired. That was the easiest lie to tell. Because how could she say, "I know what you did"? How could she sit there and confront them when they were all pretending so perfectly? So she stayed silent. But her silence wasn't weakness. It was awareness. She started noticing everything more clearly now. The late-night calls. The way her father locked the study door more often. The way Luke avoided eye contact whenever the topic of the property came close. It all felt calculated, planned. Like this wasn't a sudden decision. This was something they had thought through. And in all that planning, they had made one thing very clear. They didn't want her involved. They didn't choose to forget her. They chose to leave her out. That realization hit deeper than anything else. Because betrayal from strangers hurts. But betrayal from your own family, that changes something inside you. That night, Nia sat alone in her room, staring at her phone, scrolling through old pictures of her grandmother. Memories filled with warmth, trust, love. And then she thought about the document again. About the missing name. A slow, painful truth settled in her heart. This wasn't an accident. They didn't forget her. They erased her on purpose. That night, as Nia sat quietly in her room, something slowly came back to her mind, a memory she hadn't thought about in weeks. First it felt distant, faded, but then it became clear. It was from a few days before her grandmother passed away. Nia remembered sitting beside her bed, holding her hand. The room had been quiet, filled with that heavy silence that comes when you know time is running out. Her grandmother looked weak, but her eyes were still sharp, still full of something deeper. "Nia," she had said softly, her voice fragile but serious. "There are things I didn't tell the others." Nia had frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Her grandmother didn't answer immediately. Instead, she slowly reached under her pillow and pulled out a folded envelope. It looked simple, but the way she held it made it feel important. "Keep this," she said, placing it in Nia's hands. "And don't show anyone yet." Nia remembered feeling confused. "What is it?" Her grandmother gave a faint smile. "Protection." At that time, Nia didn't fully understand. She thought maybe it was something emotional. A letter, maybe a memory. After the funeral, everything became overwhelming, and she had completely forgotten about it. Till now. Nia suddenly stood up and walked to her closet. Her heart was beating faster as she reached for an old bag she hadn't touched in days. She opened it and started searching. And then, she found it. The same envelope, still sealed. Her hands felt slightly shaky as she opened it. Inside was a document, official, legal. Nia sat down slowly and started reading. Line by line, her eyes widening. It was related to the property. Clause. A very specific clause. Her grandmother had written that no sale, no transfer, no deal regarding the property would be valid without Nia's direct approval, and her signature. Nia stopped reading. For a moment, the room was completely silent. Then she looked at the paper again, just to be sure. It was real. This wasn't just protection. This was power. All the confusion, all the lies, all the secret meetings, suddenly made sense in a completely different way. They thought they had control. They thought they had already finished everything. But they didn't know about this. They didn't know about her role in all of it. Slowly, for the first time in days, Nia smiled. Not out of happiness, but out of realization. They had gone behind her back, without knowing she was the one person who could stop everything. A few days later, the house felt different again, but this time not in a quiet way. There was excitement. Her mother was busy on calls, arranging things. Her father was checking something on his laptop again and again. Even Luke looked unusually happy, walking around with a confidence that hadn't been there before. That's when Nia heard it. "We should celebrate," her mother said one afternoon, her voice full of energy. "This is a big achievement for the family." "Celebrate." Nia stood still for a second, listening from the hallway. Her father agreed. "Yes, a small dinner. Just us. It's time." Time for what? Nia already knew the answer. That evening, her mother walked into her room with a bright smile, the kind that felt a little too perfect. "Nia," she said warmly, "we're planning a family dinner tomorrow night. Just something nice. We'd love for you to join." Love. The word felt strange now. Nia looked at her for a moment, studying her face. If she didn't know the truth, she would have believed every bit of that warmth. "Of course," Nia replied softly. "I'll be there." Her mother smiled, relieved. "Good. It's important we stay together." Together. As soon as she left the room, the smile on Nia's face slowly disappeared. She sat down on her bed, her mind calm, but focused. A celebration. For a deal they had hidden from her. For a success built on lies. They really believed she didn't know. They really thought she would sit there, smile, and celebrate with them like nothing had happened. For a moment, Nia looked at the envelope in her hand, the document her grandmother had given her, the one they didn't know existed. Her fingers tightened around it slightly. She wasn't angry in a loud way anymore. She wasn't confused either. She was clear, very clear. The next night wasn't going to be a celebration. It was going to be the moment everything changed. Nia stood up and walked to the mirror. She looked at herself for a long second, not the same person who blindly trusted her family a few weeks ago. This version of her was quieter, stronger, more aware. "I'll come," she whispered to herself, "but not to celebrate, to finish this. Because sometimes the best way to expose a lie is to let it think it has already won." The next evening, everything was set like a perfect picture. The dining table was decorated beautifully, plates neatly arranged, soft lights glowing, food laid out like it was a special occasion. From the outside, it looked like a happy family celebration. And in a way, it was. Just not for the reason they thought. Nia walked in calmly, dressed simply, her face neutral. Her mother greeted her with a warm smile, almost too warm. "There you are," she said. "Come sit. We were waiting for you." Waiting. Nia nodded and took her seat. As dinner started, the atmosphere felt light. Her father made small jokes. Her mother kept serving food. Luke was unusually talkative, smiling more than usual, clearly enjoying the moment. It almost felt normal. Almost. Nia stayed quiet, just observing, listening to every word, every tone, every glance they exchanged. Then, right in the middle of dinner, Luke leaned back in his chair, a proud smile on his face. "I'm telling you," he said confidently, "this deal secured our future." The words hung in the air. Nia's fingers paused slightly on her plate. No one corrected him. In fact, her father nodded in agreement. It was the right decision. Her mother smiled softly, adding, "Your grandmother would have wanted this." That sentence almost made Nia laugh, but she didn't. She just sat there quietly listening, letting them talk, letting them believe everything was under control. Her heart was beating steady now. Not fast, not nervous, just ready. Luke continued, "Honestly, we handled everything perfectly. No complications, no delays. Smooth process." Smooth. Nia slowly lifted her eyes and looked at him. At all of them. For a moment she said nothing. Then, in a calm, almost gentle voice, she spoke. "Are you sure?" That's it. Just 4 words. But the effect was immediate. The room went silent. Completely silent. The kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air itself stopped moving. Luke's smile faded slightly. "What do you mean?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Nia didn't answer right away. She just looked at each of them one by one. Her mother's expression changed first. Confusion, then something close to worry. Her father straightened a little in his chair. Something had shifted, and they could feel it. Because in that moment, without raising her voice, without showing anger, Nia had just cracked the illusion. And deep down they all knew. This conversation was no longer under their control. For a few seconds after Nia spoke, no one said anything. The silence wasn't normal anymore. It felt tense, fragile, like something was about to break. Luke let out a small laugh, trying to brush it off. "Yeah, I'm sure," he said. "Why wouldn't I be?" Nia didn't react to his tone. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she slowly reached into her bag. That small movement alone made everyone at the table go still. Her mother frowned slightly. "Nia, what are you doing?" Nia placed a folded document gently on the table. "I think," she said calmly, "you should all see this." Her father leaned forward, confused. Luke picked it up first, still trying to act relaxed. But as his eyes moved across the paper, his expression changed. The confidence disappeared. "What is this?" he asked, his voice no longer steady. Before anyone else could respond, the doorbell rang. Everyone froze. Her mother looked toward the door, nervous now. "Were we expecting someone?" Nia stood up. "I was." She walked to the door and opened it. Standing there was a man in a formal suit, holding a briefcase. Professional. "This is Kwame Bediako," Nia said as she stepped aside. "My lawyer." The room shifted instantly. Kwame walked in, greeted everyone politely, and then looked at the document in Luke's hand. "I believe you've started reviewing it," he said in a composed tone. Her father stood up now, clearly unsettled. "What is going on?" Kwame didn't rush. He placed his briefcase on the table, opened it, and took out a copy of the same document. "This," he began, "is a legally binding clause added by your late mother to the property agreement." Her mother's face went pale. "What clause?" she whispered. Kwame looked directly at them. "The clause clearly states that no sale, transfer, or agreement regarding the property is valid without the written consent and signature of Nia." Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Luke shook his head slightly. "That's not possible. The deal is already done." Kwame's voice remained calm. "Legally, it is not." The words landed like a shockwave. Her father's face tightened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Kwame replied, "that the sale agreement you signed is invalid without her approval, which means the transaction can be challenged and reversed." At that exact moment, another voice spoke from behind. "Excuse me, what?" Everyone turned. Standing near the doorway was the buyer, Emmanuel Dlamini. He had arrived quietly, expecting a celebration. Not this. "Are you telling me," he said, looking directly at Kwame, "that this deal isn't secure?" Kwame met his gaze. "Without her signature, it never was." The room fell into complete silence again. This time no one could pretend. No one could smile. Nia stood there, calm, steady, watching all of them as the truth finally unfolded in front of everyone. Her mother's hands were shaking. Luke looked completely lost. Her father couldn't even form words. The confidence they had just minutes ago was gone, replaced by something else. Fear. The room felt like it couldn't breathe anymore. Everything had fallen apart in just a few minutes. Papers were on the table, voices were rising, and panic had replaced every bit of confidence that was there before. Nia's mother suddenly stepped forward, her voice shaking. "We did this for the family," she said loudly, almost desperate now. "We were trying to protect everyone's future." For a second, she looked at Nia like she expected understanding, like things could still be fixed with emotions. But Nia didn't move. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't get angry. She just looked at her mother calmly. Then she said, softly but clearly, "You mean without me?" Those words hit harder than anything else in the room. Silence fell again. Luke tried to speak, but nothing came out properly. Her father looked stunned, like he was finally realizing the weight of what they had done. Emmanuel stood near the door, still processing everything, clearly not expecting his deal to turn into a legal disaster. The lawyer's voice broke the silence. "From this point," Kwame said firmly, "the transaction is officially frozen. Any further action will be handled legally." That was it. No more pretending. No more hiding. No more shortcuts. The deal they thought was finished was now completely stopped. Nia's mother shook her head slowly. "This can't be happening." But it already was. Luke stepped back, running a hand through his hair, his confidence gone completely. Her father sat down heavily, as if the reality had finally caught up with him. Everything they planned, everything they believed they had secured, was collapsing right in front of them. And Nia, she didn't look shocked. She didn't look emotional. She just stood there watching it all settle. Because for the first time, she wasn't the one being left out. She was the one holding everything together. Later that night, Nia stood on a rooftop overlooking the city. The lights below stretched endlessly, glowing softly in the dark. The wind moved gently around her, carrying away everything she had been holding inside for weeks. For the first time in a long time, she felt still, strong, in control. She looked out at the city and whispered to herself, "They thought they sold my future behind my back, but I was the one holding the only thing that made it real."